How long, 13, 14 years. And really, I was always very curious as a kid. I always wanted to tinker. I wanted to build things. I got super inspired to, watching movies like Pirates of Silicon Valley and Antitrust when I was a little kid. You guys probably haven't seen these. Matrix, and I wanted to engage technology. So, as a student, I was kind of I was doing many things as a student, right? I wasn't very focused on academia or focused on research. I was a musician. I used to DJ all across the country, open up for electronic music stars and all kinds of craziness while in college. And then a professor discovered a number of my toy projects and was impressed and invited me to her lab. And that's where I discovered this pathway where you can tinker, innovate, and create. And there was this almost institutional means for celebrating that. And the real clincher for academia for me was the fact that I can still pursue my dreams. One of the things you have to do when you join a larger organization is you have to essentially sign away all of your ideas and get permission. This actually is covered in Pirates of the Silicon Valley when I was, 12, watching that, where Steve Jobs had to beg HP for the rights to go build the personal computer. That's kind of how industry is, and academia lets you and celebrates going out and having impact, even in the commercial realm, even in the industrial realm. And so that's how I chose this particular pathway, this particular journey.
That's pretty cool. I think you want to put the mic a bit up.
Okay.
Some people are having difficulties.
Oh, okay.
I hope you guys can hear us now. If you can just comment if this is better.
Hey,
hopefully
is this better? It might be off. It's on.
Yeah, someone just said the volume is pretty low.
Oh, okay.
But hopefully it's better
I think
now.
there's a little volume knob on this. Let me see. Is this helping?
It's good? Okay, awesome.
Okay, this is good.
That's great. Yes.
We got some help.
Awesome. But yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, I feel like, even when you're like stuck in research or whatever, stuck in college, it feels like you only have to do college, but that's not how it's supposed to be. And yeah, it's very fascinating to see how like you managed both.
Yeah, no, well, honestly, there's a number of things. So there's some massive tectonic events that happened recently. Number one, COVID. Number two, AI. And, one of the things that really I spent a lot of time thinking about, really bugs me, honestly, is the fact that students are not getting exposed to the reality of how the world works, right? And information as to what the pathways look like and what the trade-offs are with those pathways. I think there's a number of interesting reasons why that's happening, but I'm always incredibly excited to see like the work you're doing, and you're kind of an enigmatic character that is actually connecting ideas to people that matter. And so I think this is a really nice opportunity. We have to share some of those secrets. Happy to talk about those if you're curious.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I guess you managed building a company while like teaching as a professor. So how was that? Because people always tell you to like go all in on a company. So how were you managing two at the same time?
Yeah. So honestly, it's a mindset. And so when I started academia, my number one objective function really is linked to my core perspective and principles and values, and it was to have impact. And so I almost had this mindset that if I can't really have impact in the way that I believe impact should matter as a professor, then I shouldn't be a professor. And so when I started the job, I focused on the bean counting type work that you have to do for a tenure track, right? Publish papers, sit on certain committees, etc. And I knocked that out very quickly to the point where I felt there was enough of a momentum in that category of work that I can quickly turn the impact we were doing as research into impact on the world and impact in people's lives. And so I essentially sped run. So after maybe 2 years of being a professor, getting acclimated to what that means, I decided to take some of the things we were innovating and turn that into real world impact. And that's what started this entrepreneurial journey that led to multiple companies.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like a lot of students are trying to get research opportunities, especially as undergrads.
Yeah.
But I guess like Michigan and other large public schools, it's pretty hard because of just so many students and fewer spots.
Yeah.
So what do you recommend students should do to like get these opportunities early on?
I think it starts honestly with every student, every single course I create, because I'm creating a number of courses. The number one first step is to be genuinely curious. And if you let yourself be curious, let yourself play, let yourself meander into ideas and into topics, you're going to build enough of a perspective to start a conversation with any professor, right? And so you start by being curious, getting to understand what is the landscape of things being worked on outside of coursework in the academic realm, because that's really what professors do. We have to invent the future technologies as engineering professors. And then whatever you're curious about, engage. Professors have meetings all the time where they welcome minds with ideas. That's the ethos of being an academician. And so engage, communicate, talk to professors, mention the ideas that they're working on that you're interested in. Face-to-face is huge. And then join their group meetings. Go understand who the PhD students are. Ask questions. And very quickly, you'll be snapped up, right? Curiosity is the number one attractive feature when it comes to a professor investing time and energy in encouraging someone to participate in their research. And so you demonstrate that, and through that, folks will see how clever you are. Folks will see how you think, and that's how you'll get noticed.
Yeah. Shifting gears, so you were talking about a lot of voice AI stuff, back in 2018.
Yep.
And you gave a TEDx talk as well, like basically predicting whatever we have now.
So
what was your mechanism for like predicting something so accurate?
Yeah. Well, honestly, one of the things we have to do as leaders, and especially CEOs or founders, one of our biggest jobs is predicting the future, really. And then you have to execute on those visions and insights. And it's actually not rocket science. It's not anything special. What you have to do is just observe the possibilities in the market and understand the inevitability of economic incentive. And so, I always tell folks there's really two disciplines that's critical for being any kind of creator or innovator, and that is understanding the core of philosophy, how to know information, what is knowledge and what is logic and what is true, and then understanding economics, which is the incentive structures that create behaviors in the human species. And in both the micro level and the macro level, understanding the dynamics of those systems. And if you understand that whatever is possible that can create markets, whatever the market is thirsty for, is going to have implications on what people work on and what people figure out. So in 2018, that TEDx talk, I talk about being able to talk to AI like a human in the room, and using messy language, and it understands you. Understanding that intelligence to the human species is really other humans. That's how we understand it, is through communication, is how we access intelligence. There's no other way we access intelligence. And so understanding that dynamic, it was clear that the problem to work on is getting artificial intelligence to that level. And we were working on that problem feverishly well before 2022. But of course, without the means of Google, which really invented the technology, and then of an OpenAI, which really harnessed the technology to create ChatGPT. So we were doing it with small means, working with transformer neural networks well before there was the generative pre-trained transformer observation. And we had some interesting successes, and now it's clear what the future will be. And the future is going to be outside of the innovations in the model and in the innovations around the technology and the engineering around the model. And so these are things like the harness the harness engineering that folks are starting to talk about, in loop and out of loop agentic AI systems, really getting these models to perform specialized tasks well, moving from in loop toward out of loop, which is kind of manifests with OpenClaw and Hermes, which people aren't really talking about enough right now, and those kinds of systems. And so, so that's the secret.
Yeah, and I guess like what is the next thing you think will be the future, and how are you like building towards it right now?
Well, there's a couple of trends going on right now that is folks are not talking about enough, especially in this country. The number one trend, and this is a massive shift this year, is 2 years ago I used to talk about, oh, these open weight models and these small language models, etc., will catch up one day. Well, they've already caught up months ago, and it's through models like Kimi K 2.5, Minimax M 2.5, and GLM5. Like these models essentially are performing like Opus 4.6, ChatGPT 5.4, etc. They're competing and they're open. So that's one important trend. There's two more quick ones. No, the second trend is Apple is orienting their business 100% around out of data center AI, right? So what Tim Cook is saying is he wants to move AI out of the data center, and they're executing on it. There was an M5 processor that just came out with 4x tokens per second on your MacBook. But what hasn't come out yet, that's going to be a doozy, is going to be the Mac Studio. And it's smart because then you can put an Opus grade model on your desk, control it, fine tune it, do anything you want with it. And there's clearly demand when you look at the Mac Minis, the sharp uptick in Mac Minis when OpenClaw came out, which isn't even a model, but just prompts around the model. That's two. And the third killer observation is the generality of OpenClaw itself, right? So that's hardware, that's open models, and then the generality in China, there's grandmas lining up, thousands of grandmas literally lining up. I think it's Alibaba is doing a program where they're going to help you set up your OpenClaw. And everyone in China is trying to create their own OpenClaw that can run at home as a buddy that can do things on the computer for you or as you. And so that shift, we instantly saw NVIDIA is now launching NemoClaw, and there's already NullClaw, and there's like 6 other claws. And then there's Hermes. So that trend, it changes everything we knew about agents, right? We're outside of the land of Claude Code now. Claude code is boring. Open code is boring. What's interesting are the skills, which are really the facets of, say, your OpenClaw, and OpenClaw level architectures, which is beyond the previous notion of agentic AI. So this is going to change the landscape fundamentally. Basically, NVIDIA is at risk. Data centers are at risk in a big way. So we're going to see some really disruptive movements in 2027 from what I'm observing.
So what should like students, CS, technical students, or even any other major at this point, like what should people be doing? What is going to be the future of work?
I think the most concerning thing that's happening right now in academia is the fact that professors and the academic institution is moving so slowly to re-understand what skills need to be held by students in the future. I teach primarily seniors and grad students, and almost all of them are wildly behind the realities of the market. Most of them don't understand that models can call tools, like seniors graduating right now. And we are actually actively, there's at least half of the academics that colleagues I work with, put a lot of energy into keeping models away from the work that students do, and agentic AI away from the work that students do. So students are coming out pretty ill prepared. I mean, I think the number one thing a students should do is they need to learn on their own for now how to integrate these tools into their workflow. The Y Combinator CEO, what's his name again?
Gary Tan.
Yeah. Just released GStack. You got to play with GStack and understand why it ticks and why it works. It really is a disruptive emergence of systems like GStack and the way people are using skills now. And if you're not using skills, and if you don't have experience with models, building agentic systems and wielding agentic systems, you're not ready. And so that's what I would try to really brush up on right now.
Yeah, I have a lot of follow-up questions, but we have some questions from the audience. So someone's asking about, tell us more about the Jack and Joseki language you're making.
Yes, well, so Jack and Joseki really spawned out of my observations around 2018 and beyond. We've got a massive, the way we build software. Oh, My mic is mute. I don't know how to unmute it. Okay, is it good now? I don't know. Yeah, it's good. Oh my gosh, the mic was mute the whole time. Oh no.
But he could hear us from.
Oh, you can hear me from your mic because I'm loud. Got it. Yeah. Anyway, so Jack and Jaceki, the programming languages haven't evolved since 1989 is when Python was invented, and 1994 is when JavaScript was invented. But most of the code we run today live as Python, JavaScript, or native code. And you know, there's we currently have to make these massive decisions as to what kind of developer we want to be. Do you want to be a front-end developer? Do you want to be a back-end developer? What languages should you learn? What tools should you use? And I think that that's a fallacy. I think that we haven't done our work as academicians and intellectuals to create the next level of abstractions to simplify the way we build software. Back in the 80s, one person can create Mario, launch it to the world, and have great success. Today, one person cannot create the next Twitter, launch it to the world, and have big success. And so Jack tries to realize that vision. And so, what would take thousands of lines of code could be articulated cleanly in just 50, 60 lines of code in Jack. And Jack is interoperable with Python, JavaScript, and CABI. So you can use the same ecosystems, the same packages. Any node package can be imported into Jack and Jaceki. The reason I created it for myself, right? I don't want to learn Rust. I don't want to know Python and Rust and JavaScript to create a thing. I don't want to have to learn, Kubernetes YAML files. I've got 80 YAML files. There's a break in YAML files 57. And now I have to go into my Rust code base. Now I have to go into another polyglot problem. It turns out that the technology exists and the insights exist to create one language that can span all of those spaces where every line of code relates to the actual thing you're building and not what's underneath the thing you're building. And that's what Jack has achieved. And so we're seeing incredible results. There's a number of companies that are building around Jack. And there's a number of open source software and products that we're observing. It's going into the enterprise and so forth. It's a young language. It's a young ecosystem. But the beautiful thing is developers today don't have to give up any package they love. Any node package, any Python package, any design workflow is interoperable. And so I think that's why we're seeing such great traction.
And I guess the follow-up question is, the reason there's different stacks is so that we could go and fix bugs that are specific to each front end, back end, or whatever AI databases.
Exactly.
How do you think if it's in one framework, is it still going to be easy to debug?
Yeah, well, so there was a time, and so the computer science folks would understand this, where developers had to decide what data would be in registers and what data would live in memory, and how do you move your memory from the processor to memory so that your function call knows where to get the data. Developers had to do that. But then that moved into the runtime system. That moved into the compiler. And so the insight of Jack and Jaceki is all of that hard stuff. Why do you need to know what put, get, patch, delete, post is in order to articulate a to-do list, right? The compiler can actually handle the complexity. That looks a lot to me like moving registers into locations for a function call. And so we move that complexity to be the realm of the runtime and compiler that automates it. And then we also give you full access where you can leverage any wisdom that you would want to bring to the table so you can tool it yourself.
Got it. Yeah. We have another question from the audience.
Yeah.
They're asking what is exciting for Michigan.
Yeah.
So yeah, love to know your thoughts.
So Michigan is a very unique university, right? Because Michigan is one of the most, let's say, I've worked at a number of universities in my career, right? Michigan is one of the best environments to lead and create new ways of doing things, right? And so I think there is a burgeoning evolution towards focusing the department and the school towards the translation of innovation into companies, into startups, into industry. And so There's a lot of energy to cultivate students to become founders. That's burgeoning. There's a lot of celebration and encouragement in changing the way we teach, changing the way we really kind of participate with the unique role universities have in the world for the next generation of leaders. And so there's a lot of activity going on there. And I'm involved in a number of efforts like the Pose Grant. And then I'm working with colleagues that are involved with a number of efforts like Chris Flotner and Lingjia Tang. And so, I think that's a great place to start when it comes to understanding the exciting possibilities, given how you're oriented towards research, towards entrepreneurial pursuits. But there's tons more.
Yeah. I think you also mentioned earlier how people are just like locked in this bubble of like not using AI tools just because how the curriculum is.
Yeah.
And I feel like many people are just focusing on studying and getting a GPA of like 4 or whatever. But they're like not trying to be as social, or not trying to like get to know each other more. How do you think, like, is that a problem at Michigan, and how do you think like we should try and solve it and make it better?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that one is one of the most stark things I'm observing year over year, is we're definitely getting to a place where we are a community of strangers more and more every year. And I think, COVID really created a step function in that. The concept of remote became a thing. Like all of the students today probably experience the notion of remote work or remote watching your classes through the screen. They probably experienced that as normal, but that was new. That was unprecedented at that time. So that kicked things off. And now we're observing this interesting trend where folks would rather engage with a GPT to ask questions than with each other or with a professor. And that's becoming a culture. It's becoming a culture of expecting to communicate to learn, but communicating with this new tool. And so that changes the ethos as to how students engage with each other and with professors. And I think that, that actually diminishes one of the most important things and opportunities about university. I actually think university is more than 50%, even more so now, more than 50% education through connection with each other, with professors. And if you don't capture that, you're not getting your money's worth, right? A GPT professor is pretty good for the stuff that is in a textbook. You know what I'm saying? But it's pretty bad at things like having this conversation that we're having right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
There's another question, which I also had this question. It's like, do you recommend a degree even matters for CS undergrads, and also like people dropping out for startups, right? Like, what do you think is the purpose of college now?
Yeah, so I'll tell you guys the truth, right? Because I guess since I'm a professor, I'm supposed to give you a certain answer. But let me just give you my real perspective. I honestly believe that if you can find a community of people that challenge your ideas and you grow from that, and you develop perspectives around understanding truth, perspectives around study, I think you should pursue that in the way that enriches you most. The four-year institution is when it comes to technology and innovation in technology, it's not as relevant as it used to be. I mean, if you can go to Y Combinator, then and get the same kind of challenge and growth, that could be incredibly healthy. I think 4 years also is a long time, if you don't engage it properly and get the enrichment in the right way. There are options for which your personal growth could be more optimized and optimal beyond just the 4-year academic institution. And so there's a number of right answers to that. But I think the key tenet is to be challenged and to have to adapt both your thinking and also have to adapt your skills for survival in a community, right? Like those aspects is what really turns you into a leader, or turns you into a thinker, or gives you the skills relevant to have impact in this world. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think there's a number of right answers.
Yeah, I think it's very like situation based.
Yeah.
Depending on like how mature you think you are.
Yep. Yep.
Another question is, when you're like doing your first company, you were like on 250 flights basically a year.
Yeah.
How like mentally and emotionally and physically like stimulating was that? And
yeah, that's a really, you know, a very few, I think there's not a lot of folks that can kind of psychologically that have had that experience, right? Psychologically, it's a lot like, I think it's most akin to the concept of constantly being on tour as a musician, and also the concept of going to war. I think the psychology of an individual that's fighting a war, battle after battle, being deployed, and then mixed with the psychology of someone that's tour after tour performing, it was my experience. It was continual performances that were battles, and indeed, that's kind of one of the important roles of a CEO. But I was a really, you know, at that point, I was very forward deployed CEO. So that means that I'm engaging with customers, solving problems, and also creating trust constantly, going to Europe every weekend, going to Singapore every other weekend. You know, like you really had to be where folks needed you to execute the mission of the company. And so it's unsettling. You always have this feeling in the back of your head as, I can't wait to go home. I can't wait to have normal regularity and like brush my teeth with the same pattern and see the same stuff when I drink my coffee, you know, as opposed to flight, airport, location, meeting, talk, meeting, talk, meeting, location. It's incredibly, it's fraying to the psyche. But sometimes it's necessary, and you have to understand, if you're doing that all the time, you're building your company wrong. And in a lot of ways, if you are at a critical failure point of success or growth in your company, you haven't built it right at a certain scale. You know, after about 15 to 20 people, if you're still in that spot, you're having trouble building your company. And so you can have great success, but you're having trouble building your company. I mean, I'll invoke Elon Musk like for a second. Elon Musk's talent, I think, is the opposite of building your company wrong in this way. Because if you look at Elon Musk, he's got Tesla, SpaceX, more Starlight, others X, etc. And I know his talent is building his company in such a way that he is not the failure point. You know what I mean? Because those companies, it's impossible to be the failure point and do that many at the same time. And so like, these are the kind of like observations you can make. If you have a CEO like Steve Jobs probably wasn't, like, he was a failure point to Apple. Now, he grew into the point where he was able to put into place the right things so it can sustain. But Apple is not the same Apple today. We have the same product line as we had when he was around. And Apple was known for creating new concepts of products. So it's a very interesting dichotomy, right? Because we celebrate everyone, and there's different kind of talents. But you know, the observations you get when you're in this war gives you the kind of perspective to understand the difference between, say, a Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, and what the strengths and weaknesses would be across these archetypes.
So you basically want to build a company where even if you leave, it's self-sustaining after a certain point.
Yeah, exactly. You want to minimize bus factor. So we call it, you know, like a lot of folks call it bus factor. In open source, that's a very common term. Is the open source project dead if the one maintainer is not able to continue? Yeah, I think that if you want sanity, you have to do it that way. Like, you know, otherwise you're going to have to come up with some other mechanism to have the balance that one needs in one's life, you know, to have well-being. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Another crazy thing you did was like rejecting a $50 million acquisition offer.
Yeah.
So like, what was the reasoning behind that? And
yeah,
what would you do different?
Yeah. Well, you know, this is I think this is a very important point, right? And we were just chit-chatting about this the other day, about the fallacy and the hazard of linking one's identity to external factors, right? Many CEOs, especially young ones, especially early CEOs with their first company, let's say, are going to see that company as their baby, right? And why do we even use that term, their baby? Implicitly, a baby is an externalization of one's identity, right? And that's what we mean when we say this is your baby. And I think that is fundamentally, not ideal. It's not wise, right? And I think that, you turn down all the offers. You're like, no, I'm going to take it to IPO. Oh my gosh, I'll never let go of leading the thing. And so, like one might say a prototype of this, and I don't know, right? I would never speak for someone else, but at least symptoms of this may look like a Facebook, right? Where you still have the same CEO on Facebook and making very top-down decisions. And I think, I actually like Mark Zuckerberg a lot. I have a lot of respect for him. But he might be an element of the kind of connecting one's identity to the company. And I think that I turned down everything. I was like, 50 million, nah, maybe a bill. And this is why nobody was selling companies for a bill. But that was the mentality, because it was like selling one's identity. And I think that we do this with many things, right? We do this all the time, and you have to find it in yourself. Oh, I love my car so much. If it gets a ding, I'm crushed for a week, right? It's almost like the car represents more than it just being a vehicle for value in the world. And so I really think now I see companies as vehicles for value. And I really believe that realizing that value or proving that value, the first thing I'd want to do is to establish the longevity of the company with more umbrella and more de-risk than, say, wrapping a company up into one's identity, right?
Yeah.
If that makes sense, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's also like just a sense of detachment, right? Exactly. Whatever we're doing in life, I think it's important to be a balance of being sane and like, but at the same time, you also have, I think it's reverse psychology, because you also have to be like crazily obsessed, right, to work in the first place.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's a tough balance.
It's a tough balance, but there's a distinction between being crazily obsessed with a vision as to how the world ought to be and with a company, right? Because a company has a logo and a name. But then there's the vision of what the world ought to be. And I think one of the biggest realizations is that your capacity, an individual's capacity to create the world as it ought to be in their eyes, lives inside them for real. It doesn't live in the company. You know what I mean? And this identity attachment is very, very fundamental. Athletes see it. So you'll have these athletes. There's an athlete, and it's kind of a sad story. There's an athlete that there was a story about who recently was at risk of never being able to play the sports again. And she made the worst choice possible, right? Based on that devastation of that. We see athletes get injured and they're lost. And folks not find their way. We actually get attached and see identity in even our jobs. And you lose a job, it's a crisis, right? And so this notion of being attached to what I call a manifestation of the persona, and this is like, like Nietzsche and Jung and folks have discussed these kinds of topics, but when you're attached to the persona and you don't understand there's a distinction, then you're at psychological risk epically. And to understand that the value of talent or the beautiful nature of a vision doesn't live in the projection of that persona, it lives in the person themselves, is actually incredibly freeing, because then it doesn't matter what your job is. It doesn't matter if you keep this role. Oh, I'm an ex-Google. I'm a Googler. I did FANG. So that I went to Stanford. I'm a Stanford grad. Thank you very much. And then what if that was stripped away? What are you then? And I think that's the important question. And if you are talented and if you have a good vision, you'll be more powerful in executing it if you understand it lives inside of you.
That's actually very true. Like, even for me, I feel like people tend to recognize me for my titles, not me as a person. And like, I feel like the way society is built, it's very like seeking validation.
Sure.
And that's why like people sometimes don't even look at you if you don't have that brand.
Right.
So like why is it that society is this way? I'm like, what should the next generation change to like
Yeah.
focus on people as humans and not as
concepts,
X
as concept. Exactly. And this is the key crux of the question. And I'm glad you asked that, because it's important to tease out, to understand that these affix, when we affix ourselves with these titles or concepts, or you have this, or you did that, or you went to this school, we as the person need to understand that that is a tool. That is not you. So it is useful and it does help in affecting your vision, but it's not you. So if there's a death of that, like let's say, Stanford, I don't know, I'm trying to find a good analogy here, but whatever. Let's say that externality that's giving you value goes away, then you have to then understand the landscape and create new externalities that can be used as a similar tool, right? You create something else that's important. You add value to another organization in a way that they celebrate you, and in a way there's a mutual benefit that organization also helps you attain more opportunities. So it's okay to participate in that world, because we are in that market. It's a human fundamental thing that we have first impressions, that we use heuristics. It's psychologically well-founded. Like, I look at this person, I have to use heuristics, or I might make bad choices, right? If you don't use heuristics. And this is a manifestation of that part of the human behavior system. But the important notion is understanding that there is a separation between you and that, in a way that you can't get wrapped up into that identity, because then you make unnatural choices, and then you become more at risk. Someone can threaten to take away that from you. Oh, I'm going to strip you of your board seat on, I don't know, McDonald's board. And then you're like, okay, I'll do whatever you say, because I am that. But to understand that you're not that, and that you have the talent to procure Burger King, and it lives in you, gives you freedom to operate in this world and make natural decisions as opposed to unnatural decisions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a very interesting way of putting it.
Yeah.
What's one skill like that founders underestimate they should have?
Yeah, honestly, I think the number one thing that is a common mistake that founders underestimate they're going to have is, you have to understand that you have to speed run failure. And so a lot of founders will love their idea and want to get it right. And that's actually not the goal. The goal is to create that feedback loop that has failures, that creates the best learnings on one's journey. And so you should do things where you know you will fail. You should go before you're ready. You should pitch an idea before you've thought it through, so you can understand, so you can fail to understand the reality of the world. We can't understand reality on our own. It's only through these mirrors, the idea mirrors of other people's reflections, and many of those other people's. And I think that's the number one mistake. Folks will try to build something, and they have a great idea and they want to get it out, and they'll expect it to succeed. But it's a process of failures to understand what the world really is. And some people might project that into product market fit. It has to be a loop. There's a lot of ways that this kind of manifests. But speed running failures, incidents, you want many failures up to success, and then you want them to happen as quickly as possible. Like, that's what you're optimizing for. So if you're not failing enough, you will never succeed. Honestly, like, if you're not failing enough, you'll never succeed. Is really the key piece of advice I would give to any burgeoning like leader.
Yeah. Now the next question is, what is the ideal version of a university for you, and what are you trying to do differently, like doing all these courses, the hackathons?
Yeah. So that's I love that question, right? That's a very good question. It really kind of gets to the crux of what, so I think it's really important. I spend a lot of time, I'm really kind of fixated, or I spend a lot of time thinking about the next generation of humans. And, I really think, like, the ideal version, I think, of education looks like, I think it's philosophy, it's economics, and it's understanding the tooling of technology together. And I think the most important aspect is imparting into students an orientation around the pursuit of rigorous truth and what that is. You know, we have all these beliefs, right? We have all these thoughts, and there's this illusion of the human mind that we assume they're true, right? And so, and we live in a world like that. And I honestly think college is to diminish that, because that is, to me, and I'll just put it like this, it's the childish thing to assume that you're right and valid. That is a lack of maturity. I think ultimate maturity is to assume you have to refine. You have to evolve everything you think at all times. And you have to continuously be evolving. And I think that a good education will produce a translation of a human from, everything is this kind of like, everything is, I think is real.
Black and white.
Right. And then into someone who thinks and pursues a refined model of truth continuously. And I think that that's an art. That's something you do. It's not something that you are. It's something you learn through, you know, the journey of a real education. And so, like, that would be it. I think it can be done in 18 months too. I don't think you need 4 years.
That's true. Yeah.
If ever there's a Mars Institute when I'm old and retired, check it out. Check out Mars Institute. It's gonna be very different.
Yes, absolutely. And you're also like doing your own course, and you're also doing this hackathon, Jack Hacks.
Yeah.
We'd love to talk about that and tell all the audience about it.
Yeah. So there's a number of courses that I'm innovating. So I have a conversational AI course, 449, that evolves every semester. Because every semester, the entire landscape of AI evolves. It's going to evolve into understanding agentic AI systems. And for next semester, I also have an open source course that I'm creating this semester, along with my colleagues, Lingjia Tang and Chris Flotner. And we're also working with Anthony Sotile, who's a open source leader in our community and a member of our university community. And we're innovating this class around understanding open source and how to have impact through truly creating something valuable. So that's another one. And another big one is I'm creating a compilers and runtime systems for artificial intelligence and accelerating AI. And that just deals with how do you get models to like map to GPUs and TPUs and accelerators maximally performant. And that's actually a software compilation discipline for which there isn't much education around. And so those are just a couple of the classes I'm creating here at Michigan. And there's actually more classes I want to create. And I might actually be working on this kind of philosophy, the intersection of philosophy, economics, and AI creating with AI as one course. That'd be a wild course.
I think that is the course
you
should be taking.
All right.
And we're also hosting Jack Hacks April 4th to 5th.
Oh, yeah, Jack Hacks. Oh, everybody, you have to be at Jack Hacks. It's going to be insane. There's going to be incredible vibes. We're going to be engaging new technologies. We're going to be still wielding the old technologies that we know and love to create new things. We're going to be doing a lot of AI pair coding, vibe coding, agentic creations. We're going to be creating agents. We're going to be using agents to create agents. It's going to be nuts. So if you haven't signed up, sign up and just be there. I mean, the people that'll be talking and the people that you're going to get exposed to are folks that really capture the ethos of this conversation and our community here.
Yeah. We have a question from the audience. So as an entrepreneur, which books or resources do you recommend students watch?
Yeah. So there's Crossing the Chasm, number one. Honestly, oh my God, there's such a long, hard thing about hard thing, Crossing the Chasm. I wrote a book, check it out. It's called Breaking Bots, whatever. It's on Amazon. Anyway, so I got to plug my own book, I guess that's fine. Anyway, there's a lot of good books, but I would start with those two. But Crossing the Chasm is a very important one. And I think the key lesson that I actually teach everyone, even my colleagues, about crossing the chasm is to understand that whenever you engage any human around your product or idea, they fit in one of those buckets: innovators, early adopters, pragmatists, conservatives, and skeptics. There's a beautiful graph for this. Just Google it, you'll see it. And you have to identify very quickly which one you're talking to. Every time I talk to Vatsal, I'm talking to an innovator, early adopter. It's clear. When I talk to, when I talk to some other people, I won't name names, I'll be like, smartest person in the world. I respect everything they say. They're brilliant, but they're just a pragmatist skeptic. There might be a conservative skeptic. And so your idea isn't bad if a very brilliant conservative skeptic doesn't like it. And your idea isn't good if like a super innovator loves it. That's brilliant. You have to understand how to take the feedback from every individual, not as a reflection of your product, but as a reflection of the mixing of them and your product. And Crossing the Chasm has the most beautiful picture to help you think through that, because you could easily get discouraged if you happen to talk to a skeptic that's genius. You know what I mean? And I think that that's the saddest thing in the world. So anyway.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. We don't have any other questions, but yeah, feel free to guys like type in questions in the chat. We're also open to like an open Q&A from all of you guys. Let me just hide that.
Yeah, and Vatsal, I think one of the things. So can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
So tell me a little bit more about you and what drives you and your kind of perspective and orientation into your future.
Yeah, so I think like while coming into Michigan, I was trying to do this pipeline of getting into clubs and getting external validation, right?
Yeah.
And like I thought that communities were at these clubs, which would help me get a job, get a big tech job or whatever. That was like, because it's like as Asian people, that's just what's told us as we grow up, right?
Yeah.
So I was following that path,
right.
But luckily I was able to do a lot of hackathons and meet a lot of cool people. I was able to work with a startup early on, and I feel like being in the Bay just really exposed me to so many unconventional people.
Yeah.
And it's like being unconventional is the norm there.
Yeah.
Which made me realize like you only live once and you only have a limited amount of time.
Exactly.
So what are you doing with your life? Like if you're just following the path that hundreds of other people are following.
Yeah. And how important do you think that exposure was, right? Like would you have been able to come to the perspective you have without necessarily going to the Bay, let's say?
Probably not. I think like experience, just living through all the different things I did is the reason why I have knowledge or the perspective I have right now.
Yeah.
I feel like I can read as many other books I want, but without like being there and like just being in those moments, it would be difficult to have that kind of experience.
Yeah. And do you think then, what are your thoughts about the folks who were just born and raised in the Bay? Are they losing something by never seeing anything outside of the Bay? Or is it just you just got to get lucky? Like, how do you think about this?
Yeah, so I've heard like high schoolers doing startups now. Like it's kind of the opposite, where over here we're ingrained to get this big tech route. Over there, they're ingrained to do the startup route, is what I'm seeing. So there's also a saturation of startups. I feel like there should be a balance. And I think you should just travel a lot. I personally love traveling. Yeah. And I feel it's good to see people who are not like you.
Yeah.
Because if you're just going to be with people like yourself, it's like a big bubble.
Yeah.
So you don't want to like over index on that as well.
Yeah. And, I ask because I think, it's the behavior of being exposed to many different ideas, perspectives, and dynamics that can really has really enriched your perspective, right? And so, I mean, from my observation, that'll be my analysis. And I think that this is a really important thing. Like, and this should be the value of, say, academia, is to expose folks to different perspectives. What do you think is missing at University of Michigan, or what can be done in university, like the unique insights that you think is valuable other students should have?
Yeah.
That you've gotten.
I feel like
what should we be doing?
So it's a big school, 7,000 undergrads in 1 year. And I feel like there's a very, very small portion of those people who actually want to like do something bigger than themselves in this lifetime, right? I feel like everyone wants to do consulting or big tech or whatever, right? Like, and it's also kind of toxic, especially at Ross. Like,
yeah,
I feel like because they're just trying to like get better than each other, and like get that job first.
Yeah.
But like, why are we? It's kind of like a GPA, right? You just fine tuning your brain to be optimized for this reward, which is
Right.
getting a job
Yeah.
or getting an internship and just getting that logo. But like, and then you're just like bragging it. You're wearing the hoodies. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're not like, I don't know who you are as a person.
Exactly.
Maybe you don't even know your name.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the same thing as detachment from like objects and companies,
Right.
and like actually focusing on what makes you you,
Right.
and doing things you're really passionate about, right?
Right.
Like I love doing content creation as well now.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's not something which tech people need to do, but
Yeah.
you should start doing,
Yeah.
because in this like current economy and like current state of things, I feel like attention is the new economy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you know the right people and you know how to talk to people, that's way more valuable than just knowing facts, because AI also knows facts.
Exactly. And you know what strikes me about what you're saying is, you know, there's almost this kind of brainwashing that happens just incidentally. So culture brainwashes.
Yeah.
Right? It just not in a, there's no like negative intent. It just emerges from what you're exposed to. What you're exposed to is almost a selective brainwashing of oneself. And I think that it's interesting that you know, in the Valley, there's a little bit of brainwashing of like high schoolers, like, I have to do a startup or I'm nothing.
Yeah.
And then like here, it's like, I have to get this awesome job or I'm nothing. Other places, I have to work at FANG or I'm nothing. So like, there's this kind of brainwashing, and there's this empowerment that happens when you get to observe multiple of these, right? And then you get to like, be thoughtful about what matters, right? But you have to almost have the information, I'm guessing, the information of what reality looks like in different milieus, right?
Yeah, I think there needs to be like exposure to all sorts of communities.
Yeah.
We do have questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Edward is asking, what do you recommend non-technical people do in an environment that's dominated by AI?
Right now, it's guys, non-technical people, bros, like all the non-technical people that are listening right now, now's the time to tinker with building software. Honestly, right now, you get to create software like it's a craft. I actually am familiar with this emerging community of folks that never been to college. They like do construction and they're building apps in their basement and they're like trying to launch them and stuff with this tool. I think tinker and play with AI. Don't try to situate yourself. Don't try to situate yourself alongside AI trends. Wield the AI trends. These are tools for you. And honestly, the best computer science engineers, coders, engineer folks are becoming less special right now because of this trend. This is an equalizer. This is, you know, guess what? When we got Google, anyone could research, you know, a product, right? Back when we had to mail letters, there probably were people that had a job of like, I'm the product researcher. I'm going to fly to India to see what their spices look like these days or something, right? But now you just get it online because we're all experts now. Now everyone is able to become an expert at building software tools. And so I would say non-technical people should learn AI, inhale it, and just let your ideas, learn to wield it and let your ideas manifest. The analogy, I've got to give you guys this analogy. I call AI Magneto's superpowers. So have you ever seen X-Men? You ever seen Magneto? He can like move like metal. He could construct a building by just putting metal together. That's a superpower. If you don't know X-Men, I'm either old or something's wrong. Anyway, so that's what AI is. So no longer do we have to know construction to build a building. Like Magneto doesn't need to know steel making and construction because he could just do it with his powers. AI gives us that with anything digital. Absolutely anything digital. We have superpowers now. So it's a great equalizer. Engage is my advice, right? That's one word. Engage on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, this brings me to another point. Like Sam Altman tweeted about how he's super grateful to like all the people who wrote software character by character. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of backlash on that he's not like, it's like pretty bad because you got engineers to replace themselves. So what is your thoughts on that?
I think Sam Altman is like, I'm grateful for those who created the data that allowed me to build my model.
Right? Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, I think, first of all, I don't fault Sam Altman for saying it. I actually think it's cool. I think it's cool that he would say that and he appreciates it on that level. He has enough perspective to understand that the world we live in today really comes from the labor we had to do previously. Honestly, this is one of the phenomenologies or the phenomena around, I call it hero worship. The thing is, Sam Altman used to be a hero, but now we love to hate him as a species. This is almost like it's almost an inevitability, I think, for anyone that has the kind of platform that Sam Altman has. So I think we're just experiencing Sam Altman bad, like vibes or like the culture. And so I don't think he can say anything that's not going to be like ripped to shreds right now. And that's a very painful thing. If he's going through that now, he's in a very special kind of growth journey, experiencing that part of the arc.
Yeah. I feel like that's the problem with society is they don't wait to like put a man on like all the heights and then just take him down.
Yeah, exactly.
Second, right. Yeah. So I feel like it's again the same thing. What matters is you and who you are to yourself. Exactly. What others think of you. Exactly. I think we talked about that as well. Like, who you really are. Are you like yourself? Or are you like a product of the people around you? Exactly.
And this is a very interesting dichotomy, because at the end of that conversation, where we landed was there is a balance between the two. You know, like it's important that you are influenced by the mirrors of the people around you, but it's also important that you don't let those mirrors define you. And so I think there's a tension there, but someone like Sam Altman, you also have to recognize when you're in the mirrors of horror, funny house, when all the mirrors are skewed. So the hate he's getting on Twitter or whatever he's getting, like, he has to understand those are not good mirrors. And so you have to select your mirrors, I think, is the answer. You have to select the mirrors you trust.
Yeah. We have a question: is Jack Hacks online or in person? It is in person in the University of Michigan, happening April 4th to 5th. And yeah, like you guys should check it out, jackhacks.org, and feel free to like register. We're super excited to have everyone.
100%. If you can't afford it, ping us. If you have talent and you can't afford it, we'll look at it. We'll look at you. If you need to fly out, we'll look at your situation, what you've done in the past, and maybe we could do one-off grants or something to fly you out. Because we want anyone who has passion and who wants to engage with talent manifested. I would be happy to help them come.
Yeah. Another question is, how influential is it to be surrounded by other unconventional people, and how can someone connect with said people when you don't live in the area, like a Bay Area?
Yeah. Well, I think it's absolutely unimportant to live in the Bay Area. I think it's important to get the exposure. So this is something, I mean, one way I would say it to you to challenge some of the other conversations we had is I honestly believe that if you go get that exposure and you select that is the right attitude towards the world that I want to be, I think if you then, I think the most leadership thing you can do is to build that culture where you are, which is what I'm doing. And I think the most follower thing you could do is go to that culture, just get lost in the sea of other people, to kind of be led by that culture. I think you take the perspective and you build what you want to see exist in this world. And so what I want to say to the question, well, and that's a long conversation we can all have one day, but what I could say to the question is, absolutely, guys, I build so much perspective. This might sound like bad advice. I build so much perspective on what I select to consume online, YouTube, X. What I select to consume is my window into any culture I want. I can't remember dude's name, but the CEO of Y Combinator released this G-Stack last week. And then I engaged it thoroughly and understood it and watched the content around G-Stack online to understand what does this mean for the thinking that's happening over there 2,000 miles away. Now, I'll go to conferences. There's a conference in Miami called AI Creators. And like everyone's going to be there. The creator of Claude Code is going to be there. Primagen's going to be there in Miami. Oh, by the way, all of the CEOs are leaving the Valley, the Bay, and they're moving to Miami. Everybody's buying property in Miami. So Miami is becoming a new hub. And that new hub might be even more cutting edge very soon than the Bay. So I'm going to go to that. I'm going to go just to like soak it in, to get that exposure. So you find it and you project yourself into that environment to get exposed to the ideas you want to shape you.
Yeah, that's a very good answer.
Yeah.
I think that's all the questions we have. We technically are at time, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to like type it in. We're
Yeah,
happy to
I'm
like,
here.
take more questions. What's your next big thing in AI?
So
Or
the
what's
next,
the next big thing?
the next big thing in AI, I think, is I'm gonna give the secret because this is my like secret that I'm kind of banking on and working on, and I think I'm gonna be very early to market with. But I'm gonna tell you guys, it's all good. Co-design. So people are building agents, people are fine-tuning models, people are building MCP servers, people are building the UI, people are building. Not many people are building programming languages. Not many people are building runtime systems and compilers. But I'll tell you this, even in the model and agent space, if you look at Conductor, I think the next big thing post the agentic, we're gonna have a flurry of agentic building innovation for this year and next. And then we're gonna move into specialization, which is co-designing the weights of the model and the design of the agent together as one. And we also have two classes of agents. We have like, let's call it level 1 agents. And now we have level 2 agents. What the G stack is a level 2 agent. Whatever, we can talk about it later. But these are all going to become one system. And then you can co-design the system together. If you co-design the agentic AI prompt engineered, context management system with and then you fine tune the model in a way that these are fixed in a process, I think that's going to unlock new possibilities with AI. Oh, by the way, with Jack and Jaceki, we're also going to co-design the language that the AI is using to write code. So the AI doesn't have to deal with too much complexity. It can articulate things. And that language is going to be co-designed with the agent, with the model. And I think that co-design is going to become, they probably won't call it that, but I think that that's the next step function of performance we'll get from these models.
Yeah.
And specialization. Like agents and models specialized to specific disciplines or areas.
Yeah, like
I think that's
solutions.
Yeah. So we're doing full stack.
But then we also have Cloud Cowork, which is actually kind of killing a lot of startups because it's able to do a lot of things. So I don't know if it's
for now.
It's a horizontal thing.
The beautiful thing about this era, this AI era, is that it's actually a meritocracy. In the blink of an eye, OpenAI died.
And Cloud Code.
In a blink of an eye, Cloud Code is going to die. Right? Cloud Code is still the best agent out there at that kind of in-loop agent, we can call it. Cloud Code is still the best. No one's beaten it yet. But as soon as there's an agent that beats it,
they're just going to switch.
They're just going to switch. Now, the thing is, what these companies are trying to do is they're buying loyalty by giving away tokens with those max accounts. But that's not, the thing is, people will pay 10x if the model can build more software. And so that's not enough. That helps. You can do things to try to prevent death when something is better. But the thing about AI is whatever is working better is what people will adopt. And so I think Anthropic is having a good time right now. But I wait for 2027 when people are putting these models on their desks. I think for $8,000 to $10,000, you're going to be able to run an Opus equivalent model on your desk. That's happening by 2027. And so when that happens, there's going to be more competition for beating Anthropic. And China's already beating them in some places. And I think we may see China surpass them by 2027 too. So I don't know. I'm not placing any bets on it. We do poly market. Let's do a poly market on it. Is Anthropic going to be king in 2028? We'll see. Unlikely.
Yeah.
Unless they, use Jack and Jaceki. No, I'm just kidding.
Do we have any other last minute questions before we wrap it up? We'll just wait 1 or 2 minutes. But yeah, it was a great conversation. I think there's so much information. Yeah. Obviously, we didn't even go through all the questions, but maybe we have to have a part 2.
Oh yeah, 100%. And by the way, Vatsal is actually part of our team, and so he has access to get a part 2 anytime. Like he knows how to get me to do things, so he has access to do a part 2. So if you have questions or if you have other topics you want to talk about, just send it to him. And then I'm sure he's going to be hitting me up like in a month, like, Jason, we got to do part 2. And I'll be like, all right, cool, let's do it.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't think we have any other questions, but thanks everyone for staying along. And have a great rest of your day. And thanks, Jason, for your time.
Anytime, man. Anytime.